In this episode, we are talking about all things wedding day. And we have a special guest. Sharon, I'm going to let you do the honors for this one.
I'm super excited for today. I literally was up late last night thinking about what all I want to ask this person, because she's someone that before I even started my business, I followed and kind of looked at here in our area as like, wow, she knows what she's doing. She's got this going on. Have followed her ever since, and just someone that I absolutely love. Maggie Heely, the owner and originator of Weekend Wedding Warrior, is with us today, and I am ready to share some information with her and definitely pick her brain as well. Maggie, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up the Weekend Wedding Warrior.
Yeah, so thank you so much, first off, for having me. I'm excited to be with you all. I didn't get to have Mike and Sharon the last time I was here. So
Yes, you're a repeat guest.
Repeat, I know.
I'm a very fun girl.
Made the cut. So Weekend Wedding Warrior is the company that I started 12 years ago. Now the anniversary, I'm like a couple of weeks short of 12 years.
Congratulations, by the
awesome.
way. That is incredible.
That's, huge
I
accomplishment.
appreciate that. I like to buy myself a gift on my anniversary.
Girl, you deserve it.
I'm like, this is for me. Weekend Wedding, we're a wedding day coordination company, and my background is actually in marriage and family therapy. So I did not go to school or wasn't trained formally in wedding planning, but it's kind of cliche as the story goes. It was my own wedding that really inspired me to start this company. My husband was in the Army, we were living in Louisiana, and my wedding was in New York, because that's where I'm originally from, Buffalo area, New York. And, I was like, I got this, I can plan this wedding from afar, no problem. And you know what? I kind of did okay. Like, were there some choices I might have, now certainly knowing what I know, because I was married 14 years ago, so this was prior to being in the wedding industry at all. So of course there's things I would have changed, but not until the weekend of was I like, oh man, like I did not understand what goes into a wedding, how much management there is, how much people are still going to be asking questions of me. Like literally at the rehearsal, on my wedding rehearsal as the bride, people are like, where do I go? Where do I stand? What do I do? Who cues the music? And right before, on my wedding day, right before walking down the aisle, like the girls are lined up in front of me, and the first bridesmaid's she turns around and she goes, do I walk now? Like to me, the bride with my
Oh my
bouquet.
goodness.
And I'm like, I couldn't even hear the music. Like, my adrenaline was pumping. Like literally, I'm like, I don't know, is the music playing? Boo. I had no idea. So like, that is when I literally was like, this needs to be someone else's job. Like I should be able to plan my wedding, but not work my wedding. And my mom was like sewing a bridesmaid dress that had like snapped from, excessive dancing and like, things like that. Where I'm like, my mom should be like having a fun time with this. We didn't even time it so she could get her makeup done. I mean, the stories go on and on where I was like, yeah, no, someone needs to do this for a living. And I was like, oh, maybe I can do that for a living. Here we are.
And look at you now.
14 years later or whatever.
You know what? I'm so glad you just mentioned that, because people don't know what they don't know.
Exactly.
And it's, most people out there probably haven't been married before multiple times to where you've been through it. You know how to improve on it. You can address things before they happen.
Right.
And a lot of those conversations are asked the day before, the week of. And you made a very great point about your mom, your parents. The people closest to you are the ones that tend to be the ones to help out.
Yeah.
And you want them to celebrate with you and be part of that day. So I'm so glad we're tackling this topic. I know it is a lot of questions that engaged couples that we come across talk about wedding day and leading up to that.
I think one of the most challenging things in our industry, I don't know how you guys feel, but to me, one of the most challenging things is education. When I meet a couple, educating them on what is really going to happen. Like you were just saying on wedding day. And I know for me, I won't do 2 weddings on back-to-back weekends, because the week before a wedding, I'm going to protect that couple from a million phone calls and what color socks am I supposed to wear from a groomsman, and what time am I supposed to be where, and how many people at the rehearsal dinner, and who's allergic to gluten, and just all those things that are going to come my way. So I won't do 2 back-to-back weekends because that week before is so hectic.
Sure.
So if you don't have that planner in place, whether it be someone that does, event management or someone that is a full service planner, those questions are coming to the bride and the groom.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, those questions are going to be asked of someone.
Yes, and I feel like not only bride and groom, but like Kristina was saying, their parents
Right.
should get to feel like a guest at their own event. Like my goal is that they feel like the most well-treated guest at that event.
Right.
And it's so hard to get people to understand what it's going to be like.
Right. I mean, you're just spending, I often hear from mothers like that I'm a gift to them.
Yes.
Because often, honestly, the couples can get shielded to an extent, but the mamas are the ones who are running around, right?
Well, I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
That just having a
Yeah.
planner day of or a planner for the whole wedding
Right.
is a gift.
Right.
Because for one thing, it's not just a gift to the bride, but it's a gift to the mother too.
Right.
Because she doesn't have to want to worry about it.
Right. Exactly.
So I'm going to hop right in here
Yeah.
because I think those that are listening, whether they have a planner or not, coordinator, okay,
I know so many
that's
words.
okay, and that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
And that's another thing
I was gonna say, should that be the
educate
topic?
people about.
Yes.
There are
Planner
so
versus
many
coordinator
words.
versus manager versus decorator.
Right. Your number one tip for day of, for an engaged couple, the number one thing that you want to share with our audience.
Put me on the spot. So my gut instinct, which I'm a big believer in, like just go with that gut, is build a team that you feel amazing about. Meaning your vendor team.
Amen and amen.
Yeah.
That's what's going to make your day come together.
That to me is because anything then that something will go wrong on your wedding day. I promise. We do 50 plus weddings a year. Something goes wrong every single wedding day, but it's how do we pick it up? How do we run with it? The couple doesn't even know most of the time. I
Right.
mean,
And that's where
And they should know.
professionals
Right.
come into play because they've probably seen it before.
Right.
They may have dealt with a similar problem, or they're built to take on that pressure of, okay, this has happened. What do we do?
Right.
How do we execute? How do we pivot? Whatever that word is.
Exactly.
And most of the time, thank goodness the couple doesn't know.
Right. Exactly. And the thing is that if you don't have a professional team that you feel awesome about or that you feel like you jive with, because that's the other thing, it's like fit. To me, vendors are also about fit, right? It's who's a professional, but who do you fit well with? And because you're spending a lot of time with these people on your wedding day, right? Most important day of your life, and these people are next to you more than your best friend is to an extent.
So explain to me when, like, your day of, or
Yeah.
I say day of, but that's
Wedding
not
day
Did you see her
coordination.
change when you said that?
Yes, yes. So you don't help the bride plan out each vendor
Correct.
compared to Sharon does.
Right.
So tell me the difference and how far out you work with the wedding or the bride compared to what Sharon would do 18 months out.
Sure. And I'd love to hear more about Sharon's process.
And I want to hear
was,
more
like,
about yours.
fascinated.
Yeah.
So I do flinch when people say day of, because I think day of is just a misnomer.
It
Because
almost sounds like, oh, I'm going to show up the morning of your
Yeah.
wedding and we'll get it done.
right.
And it's not like that.
And if I had like a crystal ball to know everything that was supposed to happen on a wedding day and show up, I'd have a different job, right? If I had a crystal ball, like to see the
Sure.
future, like
We all would.
I'd be doing something different, making some more money. But so yeah, I definitely think day of is a misnomer because it suggests that you just show up that day. What I like to call it is wedding day coordination. There's a million different terms of it, but basically the purpose is that I take the couple's plan, put it into my brain, right? Like make sure everything is lined up. We do a timeline meeting, so what's happening when in what order throughout the day. A walkthrough, so where is everything being placed. Procession, so who's walking down the aisle in what order, who's escorted by whom, are parents married, right? Like who can sit next to whom, like all those little details. Then I get all the vendor contracts and confirm and schedule all the vendors. So what I like to say often is if you don't have a planner or coordinator, all of your vendors come in with their own timelines, but they're literally not on the same page, right? They don't necessarily speak to each other prior
That's
to the
one of the
wedding day.
biggest challenges that I see making a timeline.
Right.
The photographer has his plan, and
Right.
the florist has his plan, and the caterer has their plan.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but your plans are bumping into each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's set it up for success. So
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in like let's work collaboratively with all the different vendors to get everybody on one timeline that works for the couple's goals, but also make sure that these vendors who you're spending a lot of money on can do their best work for you, right?
And what I hear you saying is you're taking the plan that they've put together
Yep.
and executing it.
Yes, exactly. I become them or I become the mom, and I say I, but we are a team also, so I need to like give major props to Weekend Wedding Warrior as multiple coordinators. We have 6 lead coordinators. All of them are better than me in my opinion, otherwise they wouldn't work for me. Or I work for them just as much as they work for me, you know, so I shouldn't say I should be saying we. But really, you know, like our job is to be them and work the wedding in the way that they would want it to be done, but just a little bit more polished, a little bit more professional, because we can anticipate needs that why would they know that? Just like at their jobs, they can anticipate needs, right? And then that way they can enjoy it, and they've been spending so much time and money on this one day. If you don't enjoy it, we're really defeating the purpose.
Maggie, you said something before we started recording, and you said something that like the florist. You're not worried about the color of the dresses. You're not worried about this. And I work with a lot of wedding planners, and you would not believe some of the wedding planners are more concerned about the color of a flower than they are about the couple for that day.
Gotcha.
And that aggravates me to death. Not talking about Sharon.
No, of course.
But I tell you, there are some wedding planners out there that I don't think they're focused.
I think they want to be designers.
Exactly.
To me, there's 2 different halves of the brain. It's like there's the aesthetics and the design and the creative, and then there's the logistics, practicality, make it happen, how's it going to flow, how's it going to time, right? And like to be awesome at both of those is what a planner needs to be. I'm a logistics person. I'm just the first to say, and everyone on my team is too. Like I would rather work with a creative who like can make these beautiful things happen than tell you how to
I feel
be
like
creative.
as a planner, my job is it's kind of like a coach, like the NFL draft. I'm a huge football freak, so that's what I'm
Oh my God, my Buffalo Bills
lost.
I know. It was so brutal, but anywho.
I knew you were my people. I can talk football. But anyway, I feel like it's like an NFL coach. I'm going to go to the draft, and I'm going to pick the best team that I can pick.
Right.
I know who I think the best florist is. I know who I think the best caterer for your budget and what you're asking me for is. And I want to put together that perfect team.
Right.
I want to make an amazing timeline. And I'm going to say who's coming in what door and what time they're going to unload, so there's no problem on wedding day. And then I want to get out of the way and let them do their jobs and just set them up for success, like you were saying. I don't know, like I told Mike, we had a phone conversation just the other day, and I was like, I had a meeting with a photographer who was telling me, well, I want the florist to do this with the pipe and drape so I have more light. And I want the makeup artist to do this. And I was like, whoa, stay in your lane, bud. Like I put together a really good hand-picked team here, right. And we're not going to tell them how to do their jobs.
Yeah, it can. Yeah. It's tricky, and that's a whole nother topic. But staying in our lanes and knowing where to cross over, it certainly can make things.
Yeah.
Well, I think you have a better relationship, and you grow a relationship if you're working with each other instead of telling each vendor how to do their job, because that's what they do every day.
Yes.
And then you kind of show. I'm not saying that I don't mean this the way it's sounding, but then you show up and you say, okay, we need to do this and this and this.
Oh, that is the biggest challenge as a wedding day coordinator, is because if I haven't worked, luckily now after doing this for a while, I've worked with
those relationships
are there, or people know a little bit about us. But in the beginning, especially not being involved in any of the planning meetings, not having a relationship with people and showing up and trying to communicate the couple's wants. This isn't about me.
Right.
It's not about what I want.
You're leading the charge based on what they put together.
I've asked all the right questions to the couple to understand what their wants are, and I'm advocating for them. So finding the way to ask vendors to do those things when they're looking at you like, who you? And I even did, I just had a wedding on New Year's Eve where the DJ was like, who you? And I was like, oh, this is fun. Forgot about this. I forgot about this feeling. You know what I mean? But yes, because it's having those relationships and letting people do their jobs well is so
important. I'm newer in this industry than you are.
When did you start? Why can't I remember?
Well, it's been 6 years.
Okay, yeah.
But my background's in healthcare and was the OR team leader for when I retired. So that explains a little bit of the OCD that Mike teases me about all the time. I worked in an environment that was if you didn't know every single thing,
somebody died.
Somebody could die. Yeah. So I think that's the way I think.
Of course.
But
Did she just say, I think that's the way I think? Or
I did. And
Sharon,
I meant it.
yeah, there you go.
I think
Stand strong.
I think we need that on your t-shirt.
But I know for me, so anyway, I took my business full time about 4 years ago.
Okay.
Had my years in at the hospital, retired, and took my business full time.
So half of your full-time business has been during COVID.
Yes.
Fun.
Yes. And I cried a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, like really a lot. And
Fun.
I listened to your reels on Instagram where you kept telling me it would be okay.
It was okay. It's okay, right? It's
We're
okay.
still here and
We're
we're
still
still
here.
moving
We're
forward.
okay.
But I think for me, if I have a vendor team that I know and that I'm comfortable with and I've worked with before, for me it's kind of like the trapeze artist at the circus that swings on the net. I've used this example talking about Mike before. You can swing because you've got the net underneath you.
Yeah.
And to me, that vendor team is my net.
Yes. I
Like I know that they care as much about this wedding as I do, and they're not going to let us fail.
Okay,
And
so
that's
I'm going
huge
to
to me.
hop in here because those of our listeners that are taking all this in, we are talking a lot about relationships. We're talking a lot about team. And you may be thinking to yourself, okay, we're talking about wedding day. That's the point. That is when all of this comes together. Those years of working together, taking on challenges when something does happen, having your A team. The day of, it's game day. It's go time. And that's why this is so important with your wedding day coming to life.
And I think whether you hire a full service planner or you hire wedding day coordination, I think that allowing that person, when you don't know who to pick to be your DJ, let that person have some input because that person has worked with those people. So I really think one of the main things a planner can offer is those vendor recommendations.
Yeah.
Do you offer vendor recommendations
we
to your
offer,
couples?
so like I was saying, it's like, I think of our packages like that cookie recipe.
I love that.
Here are the ingredients. You leave something out, they just don't taste right. Well, some people like chocolate chips. Some people like oatmeal raisin. Like there's add-ons, right? So one of our add-ons is personalized vendor recommendations. We offer our opinion all day long. Like I can't tell you how many times someone lately has been like, "Oh, who does draping and florals?" I'm like, "Oh, I know that guy." You know what I mean?
I got you one. That's
Yeah,
what I was.
like,
I got you one.
I know him. So like who does those things together? Yep. Okay. So I can just give names out and opinions to our clients. That's completely included. An add-on service would be like if someone's like, "Hey, I don't know where to start. Here is my budget. Here's what I like." Like I just had a call with a bride yesterday. She's like, "This is the kind of venue I'm looking for, but I don't want it to be in this part of town. This part of town, I want it to be here. I need this many people. I need a band. Blah blah blah." So it's like taking all those puzzle pieces, putting them together, and then I find out what dates they have available, what the current pricing is, and I make them a
And
spreadsheet.
that's an add-on service.
That's an
that
add-on
they can
service.
get.
And then what I like to do is give them 2 to 3 options in each category, and then they make the phone call and they make the final selection.
Okay.
So that way.
Just by you saying all that right there, that means that she is not just there today.
No, there's no day of.
Yeah. There's no
Like
such
I said, if I had a magic ball, I'd be doing a different guy.
So how far out do you usually book a bride?
It's changed with the business, to be honest. Like it can be when I
This
first
year's
started,
crazy.
this year's a little crazy, but I would say 11 months out is probably
Okay.
like our super average, but we do 2 years out and then we've done 2 months out. So as long as we're available, with which 6 of us, we typically can be
Well, I have to
available.
say, every time I know I'm doing a wedding with you, I mean, it's just so smooth.
Ugh,
You get that email that says "Weekend Warrior" or something. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you. That's exactly, and that is, we want our couples to feel taken care of, but we want our vendors. You guys are.
those vendor relationships, because I love my couples and I work with my couples like a year and a half.
Yeah, you get really tight.
I know their grandma, I know their best
Yeah,
friend,
I love it.
but we're gonna stay friends. But I'm gonna see Mike next weekend.
Right.
So those vendor relationships, man, they're so important.
Yeah. And we know that you're working hard, so we want to make your job easier. So part of,
Exactly.
I jokingly, but not so jokingly, say that I want to like literally intern with every industry and just be like, so what is it like to
I
be a
totally
florist?
agree.
What is
Yes.
it like to be on a catering team so that I can better serve and better make my timelines? You know what I mean?
Well, with working with Sharon almost every other weekend,
Yeah.
it seems like when you work together and you form this relationship, and when it comes to, for example, tear down,
Mhm.
if there's a wedding planner or somebody that they don't even have a wedding planner and he comes to tear down and we show up and they're loading their truck with dishes and gifts but if somebody there that I'm working with all the time, I'm going to chip in and I'm going to help. I take my whole team and say, okay, let's help Sharon get this done.
It's a team.
It's a team.
All a team.
Yeah. And my assistant, if we're pretty much done with our stuff, she literally she's worked with Mike so much now that she starts going around and she knows she's going to empty the water out of the vases. She's going to put a water on the table.
Awesome.
Like we really
She'll
work.
help me more than she does Sharon.
Yes, she does. I'll be like, hello, I'm over here.
I need you to come down here.
But let's talk about, I could talk to you forever, but I know Kristina's going to eventually make us wrap this up. What are some of your best tips for timeline, wedding day timeline? Because I think, to me, that's my absolute sweet spot. Let me sit down in my office with a little music.
I want to see one of your timelines.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's all about the timeline machine.
Every minute is
like,
accounted for.
like nobody bother me and let me. And I keep telling myself I'm going to start calling them guidelines because something's going to go wrong. It's not set in stone.
Sure.
But my sweet spot is that logistics.
Yeah.
Let me sit down and figure out how long transportation is going to take to get from the church to the venue, and are you going to stop at the water park for a photo, and where are you going to park and that kind of stuff. What are your best tips for couples maybe that don't have a planner and they're trying to sketch out their own timeline?
Well, first off, make a timeline.
Correct.
Right? Like that's going to be step one because
Amen and amen. Yeah.
this is embarrassing now doing what I do, but this will tell you a little bit too much about my personality pre-weddings. I was in a wedding. One of my best friends got married. He was the first one to get married. I was a groomswoman.
Love
It
it.
was really fun. Got to pick out my own dress. And his bride handed out timelines and I snickered. What is this thing? Oh, she's so over this. She's so, we didn't say extra then, but she's so extra.
She's so extra.
Was my thought. Okay, girl, cool timeline. Somebody has too much time on their hands. No, that was a very successful wedding day because she had sketched it out. And now I'm I don't do my child's birthday without a timeline.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't do Thanksgiving without a timeline.
I'm planning something for my daughter-in-law right now that I just talked to Mike about. And it's a project in Now Planner. And it's literally a party for my daughter-in-law.
Yeah, but it's just because that's the way.
That's how I think.
The brain. So that's to me is setting it up for success. So I think the one thing that people need to do is make a timeline. And the second thing you need to do is buffer more time in than you think. Because how long it takes you to drive from downtown to point A, point B in your little, sedan is not the same as a
party bus.
Trolley, right?
Yeah.
Or how long it takes you to do your makeup is not the same. Or, there's just so many things that you need to buffer time in. Or then it's somebody's got to go to the bathroom. Someone forgot their
cell phone charger. It's always
somebody
off the
forgot
bus, back up to the 6th
And the other thing is
floor.
moving people. So let's say you have a 200-person wedding and you're okay, cocktail hours from 5:30 to 6:30, dinner's at 6:30. Nope. Cocktail hour ends at 6:30. Are you closing the bar to make sure people are moving? And then that takes 20 minutes to get people seated. At least sometimes, depending on how many people, depending if they're moving floors, etc. So just buffer more time in than you think. And then if you don't have a planner, ask your DJ, your photographer, your band, whomever, your caterer, what they would suggest, and then put all those things together, put those puzzle pieces together to make one.
Well, your person with the microphone
100%.
can help keep it on schedule with announcements and stuff like that. I'm over here laughing because it just came to my mind when I first got married. It was back in the late 90s. And I'm sitting here snickering because I had a typed out timeline that I did myself, but I also had large families involved. I had a shot list that had 150 pictures on.
Well, you're a photographer now.
Correct.
If I were your planner,
And-
we would have trimmed that.
Well, also there was an assistant to check mark after every photo was taken to make sure they were all accounted for. And the older people, this is why I'm snickering, because when you said that, it came back to me. I don't know why all this is coming back. The older people, my grandparents at the time, those kind of people were first because it was going to take them longer to go from the church to the reception.
Smart.
So allow them time and get them out to where they could get seated. But I also remember having on there that between the church and the reception hall, that the limo was going to make a stop on the way. Because I just knew it was a large event and there needed to be a stop at the liquor store.
Oh, I was like, to the bathroom where we stopping?
No, it's okay, Sharon. If you can judge me,
She's
I
going
feel
to get
it.
little dips.
I
Sharon
can
is
feel it.
judging right now.
But remember, I just said 150 people
Right.
or 150 items on a shot list,
Yeah,
which
those people needed a drink after.
an antsy wedding party.
Well,
for
at first I
sure.
thought you were talking about the shot. 150 shots.
No, the
Yes,
shot
let me
list.
And then everyone got it.
Yes, but anyways, when what you were just saying, allow enough time. If you have larger families for photos
Oh, yeah.
or moving from one venue to another or even one room to another, that time frame.
No, people just don't. I can't tell you still how many emails I get from mothers who are like, okay, so we'll have 5:30, 6:30, cocktail hour, 6:30 dinner, dancing at 7:30. And you're like, oh,
No.
what just happened? No. Like, that's not, because are you going to do a toast? Are you doing a welcome? Is there a blessing? Right? Like, are you serving salads? Are you clearing salad? Like, there's just so many steps. to
So many
consider.
details.
Is it a plated meal? Do they have
Right.
a buffet?
So it's like,
I
you
totally
got to think of
agree.
each of those steps and then give those time.
And I love what you said. Whatever you're thinking, add a little bit of time to it
Yeah,
because
I
it is going
always
to take
have.
time.
Someone's got to go potty, every time. Somebody's
My
gotta go.
You said potty and she said add padding.
Oh.
About at the same time. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, add potty. That's where I'm
Yes,
going.
but that's a really good call, Sharon, because you've talked about that before. It takes even your bridesmaids
Right.
and things like that.
You're hurting people, and you're likely hurting people, not hurting, sorry, my accent there. But you're also hurting people who are drinking, so they're
Right.
just slow. And then they're
Well, and
they're
maybe-
happy and they're excited, and even if they're not drinking, they're like, they're chatting and they're not focused on moving to the next thing like we are.
Sharon, how many brides have you had that right before all of it? I think you even recommend this is make sure you go to the bathroom.
They
You've been
always
drinking water. Sharon's
It's just a nervous body thing.
Well, and Sharon talks a lot about staying hydrated. Because it's a fun day, exciting. You may be drinking
I actually
alcoholic
schedule time,
beverages.
and on my timeline it will say sequester bride.
Mm,
But I know in my mind that means
potty.
3 of us are going to take her to the bathroom. I'm going to make sure.
She is
I think
full
the
service.
keyword- I
She's
think
like, I will wipe you.
I
I know one of the keywords.
mean, you'd
of
be
this-
shocked.
I'm not shocked. I'm just
But let's not. One of the keywords in this episode is obviously going to be potty. But I've heard some stories, and honestly, Sharon, let's be realistic. That doesn't take 2 minutes.
no.
It
No,
not a bridal guy.
honestly, you think you just go in and be, allow
Well, and
yourself
the
enough time.
other thing, like as Maggie was speaking, that I thought about too is they schedule that timeline and it's just boom, 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 boom all day. And that's sequester time. I give my brides, yes, we're going to go to the bathroom. Yes, I'm going to see if your lipstick needs touched up because you drank up water or something. But you need a second to just take a beat.
Breathe, yeah.
Just breathe. Hang out with your girls. Hang out with your mom. Like, just take a beat.
It can almost come down to you're hopping from item to item on your timeline in a day. The day's over and you're what
It's
What
a
just-
blur.
what
Well,
happened?
I remember at the end of my wedding day, I was like, looked at my then husband, now husband too, but he was newly my husband, and going oh, hi, nice to see you.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if we spent
You
any time
spent it,
together
yes.
on our wedding day. I mean, we didn't do a first look, which is a whole other topic, but so we got no time together before. So it's we didn't even see each other till 5:30, and then you're just a blur and seeing people from out of town, and he's in the army, so people are flying in, and you're like, oh, hi.
And you feel like you have to
Congratulations to
talk.
us.
You feel like you have to talk to everyone because
yeah.
they made the total
Sure.
for your wedding, but you don't have a quality moment together.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally 100%
I love
agree
those.
with that.
I love talking about that because when we got married, Josh and I, it was important for us to have that time together. And when, we wanted to have more of that time with our family and friends and stuff like that. And it was really important to take that into consideration when doing so. We didn't do a first look either. And because you're right, the day can be gone and 10, 12 hours at your wedding day and hello, like you said,
Yeah.
how are you doing?
Nice to see you. That's why I'm sure you do this too, Sharon. I love to pack cake and
Yes.
and champagne.
To-go boxes.
And to-go boxes with the couple because then they can just sit in that bed. Picture them sitting in their hotel room and being like, hi, and eating cake.
Right.
in the
Oh, this
background.
is good.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
are
I
you
didn't taste
today?
this before. Exactly.
All right, Mike, I know
Well,
you went in here.
I know, sorry, Mike.
That's okay.
Ladies.
There's this one reception place in Louisville. I won't mention the names.
Oh, I found-
But
yes,
but we always have to do a room flip, and the guests have to go upstairs, and they go to a bar upstairs, and they can look down and watch us flip the room. That's usually a nightmare when it comes to timelines. I mean, I guess I'm bringing this subject up because I wish that guests would be more respectful, especially when they are doing a flip in a room. Because, the bride and groom's off taking pictures somewhere, and you're all are to be upstairs taking, drinking, whatever.
Yeah.
And we're flipping the room. But there are usually guests trying to find a seat before we even have the
We should do a
table set.
podcast on
That
guest
is-
etiquette. Have you
that
done
is-
those yet?
A
Guest
little bit,
etiquette?
but we could do more.
Like,
Hey,
yeah.
I think she likes us so much. She just said she'd be willing to come back. Did you all catch
Yes.
that?
But the reason I said that is because of that timeline.
Right.
You would not believe how many wedding planners I've worked at, and I see them pulling their hair out because this is not going the way
I
it
totally
should
get
be.
that. I hate a flip. I hate a flip. I do them. I mean, if we got to do it, you got to do it. But I agree with you. It is. I've been known to be like the Rottweiler that's in there going, "I'm going to ask you to head on up to cocktail hour because they won't
It
get
can
out
slow
of the
the
way."
process
Yeah.
I've never done one there with you, and I would hate to do one there with you.
Okay, but it goes back to what Maggie was talking about though. If you don't have a wedding planner or a coordinator and you're gotta flip the room,
Right.
make sure to allow enough time.
Right, like in that case, I would say who is flipping, right? Like who's
Yeah.
physically moving those tables? Ask those people. So if it's your
Make
venue,
sure, yes.
right? How long do you need? Like I know some venues in town are like, we need at least an hour and 15 minutes. So like your cocktail hour is not going to be just an hour.
Right.
It has to be an hour and 15. If we can get it done before then, but they won't guarantee it,
Be realistic about the time.
Right.
And because it would also depend on how much stuff you have.
Yeah.
Like how much decor.
And that's
how many-
when we show up. If there's a lot of decor, we're going to be there.
Sure.
Me
yeah.
and my whole crew's going to be there to help them move
yeah.
tables, chairs, whatever it needs to happen.
Right. And I think that is when you want to see, that would actually be really funny to like watch that, like get a video
Like a
of a
speed,
flip.
yeah.
Because
Actually,
I've
I
been
have
on the
part-
ground. I've been like pushing,
Yeah.
dance floors over, like, little me, like 5 foot me, be like, I got this. It's
Ask
like,
complete strangers, help me pick up this
yeah,
table.
exactly. Like you, come here.
If
you
you're
know.
if you're gonna stay in here, you're gonna
Yeah.
work.
It's a wild time.
Now,
It is a
Maggie,
lot of
I've got a clip of part of one. I'm not sure when we'll put it out, but it involves not even the same floor. And an elevator doesn't go to that floor, so you have to use a staircase.
That wasn't a flip though.
Well, not a complete flip,
Well, it
but
wasn't a flip, but it
might
was
be not for you.
It was
but
a flip
as
from the
mine.
wedding to the reception.
Oh, you were moving stuff from ceremony.
He was.
It was a mess.
We're not going to go there, but when you see the video, which Sharon has seen, she was like, "Oh my!"
And the
I
bride's
had no
lovely.
idea.
She's amazing. She really is.
I remember I did a wedding.
That's why you agreed to do it.
Exactly.
I've been seeing the
And
behind
it
the
didn't
scenes.
happen.
I did a wedding on a rooftop, and I vividly remember this gorgeous day. We're on a rooftop right on the river, and after the ceremony, the bride specifically did not want a full hour cocktail hour. She just wanted 45 minutes, and there were so many guests that because it was so pretty up there,
They weren't moving.
they got right up to the altar and wanted to take photos themselves instead of the bride and groom and wedding party. And I literally was saying, I'm sorry, we're going to have to ask you to go on down to cocktail hour because the couple needs to take their photos. And people looking at me like, oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, they're not thinking.
They're not
about
trying
that.
to be
Well,
a
because
donkey.
yeah, I don't think people are trying to be
Yeah.
disrespectful. They're just in their own little worlds.
100%. Another thing I would say about timelines too that I have seen sometimes even with full planning, I have brides that they'll sketch out a timeline and want me to look at it and kind of, this is what I'm thinking, what are you thinking? When you put something on a timeline and it's a task, it's something that needs to happen. Another thing that I always do is you can't just write the task. Who's responsible for making that task happen. You know, like Mike was just talking about, we had to move an arch.
Right.
Like, I just don't want to put on my timeline arch transitions to reception.
Right.
Who, you know, like
Mike moves arch
Mike moves
from
arch.
ceremony to
But, you know,
reception.
While I'm cousins.
Mike only by himself.
You know, I had a wedding and we lit the whole entire walkway with shepherd's hooks and candles. You know, it was gorgeous, but you got to know who's going to light those candles, right? Like, that was also Mike.
There's a
But-
theme. There's a
But
theme.
I think on your timeline, like, if you're trying to do this yourself,
yes, who's gonna do those?
think it through to the end. Who's responsible?
And
for
don't
that?
assume
And do
your
they
venue
know?
manager
Yes.
is doing it or your caterer. Like, you know, you hear sometimes like, oh, the caterer will do that, and you're like, you know what I'm saying? The caterers don't even have lighters.
Make sure you
or
address
unless
those.
it's for their cigarettes.
Right.
Their ratchets.
Make sure
They're not
you
gonna
address
do
those. Don't assume
Right.
anything when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah.
And don't forget about your stuff if you're getting married, your ceremony's in one spot, your reception in another. If you're doing this yourself and something is coming from the ceremony, not that needs to go. Who's taking it with them? Who's
And
transporting
have
it?
them be
Like
the
Sharon
first
said.
person. You know, a lot of times you're like, oh, the guest book. Like, we'll just take that with us. And you're like, well, if you take it with you as the bride and groom,
It's too late.
it's there after the cocktail hour, which means no one's signing it.
Well, that's something that I hate too.
Also, don't have a guest book.
They'll say,
Yeah.
we're going to do these beautiful altar arrangements, and then can somebody take them to the reception?
Right.
Okay, well,
What are the pictures?
you're going to
done?
have
Yeah.
pictures first.
Right.
So those flowers aren't going to leave until the whole wedding party's gone.
Right.
And then somebody's carrying flowers in, and the guests are already seated.
Right. And
I
then
try to discourage.
I think that happens to planners a lot because I'll have
oh, I have
say,
stuff in my trunk.
Yeah, well, Kristina's even had to meet me one time because I had a bride wedding with huge mirrors, and I don't have an SUV. And my
She
sweet
just got a
friend,
little Jetta.
yeah, my sweet
Ew.
friend
Be
Kristina.
an SUV. Actually, maybe you don't. Maybe it's better that you're like,
No.
oh, I can't carry that.
There's a plan for that. My husband just got a new truck, so I have to
Okay,
wait.
got it.
But literally, Kristina had to. She just was helping me, and she came and she sat in the back row, and we had to very quietly move these huge mirrors and easels out to her car before the ceremony was even over. But I have brides all the time that say, "Why do I need extra flowers at the reception?
Right.
You're my planner. Can't you just take
move
these
them?
arrangements from the reception to
Yeah.
the
You know,
I mean,
that's,
from the
that's
ceremony
a good
to the
point.
reception.
Like,
And no, the answer is no, I cannot.
right. And like,
I've learned my lesson.
I do understand
No.
why that's like so good in theory. I know that favorite word, but yeah.
No, it's not.
They're
No, it is not. I assure you. But
No.
she's getting better.
trying to get
And
me to
Mike
say-
is too,
They're trying to get me to
Boundaries. So
say-
they have to listen to my boundary.
I have listened to it
podcast.
twice.
I'm pretty sure they need to listen to it once a month. But just saying.
But they don't think about the fact.
Well, no, and I think
Yeah.
like you're saying, like so much of part of our job is education, and it's
Uh-huh.
like I get both sides. Like I get that you're bummed that like you just spent how much money on these beautiful flowers and you're looking at them for an hour and
Right.
or not even, and that's it. But luckily you'll get to look at the pictures of them forever.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
moving them is A, B, C, and D, which is not going to be what you want. Or
Well,
like,
and-
oh, my least favorite is like I'm going to repurpose
Repurpose.
the chairs.
Yeah.
The chairs from the Sarah. We're just going to
No.
carry them in. Who's carrying them
No.
in? I'm carrying them in. I mean, I could carry them in, but you really want to watch 5 foot me? Like, oh,
Right.
like, no, you don't want, no one, guests don't want to see that.
Well,
Nobody
and
wants to
guests
see
don't want.
that.
And
I
guests
don't
don't want to carry their
Oh,
own
I don't-
chariot.
yeah.
That's a whole.
That's a whole nother no from me. We're not going to ask your
I'm
guests to
sweating
pick
right
up
now.
a chair.
Like, literally, I just started to sweat.
But
Thinking about it.
I've had brides too that
Has
don't.
somebody really came across that before about moving your own
Oh,
chair?
yeah.
Yes, I've had
Oh,
multiple
yes.
of those.
So
Yeah.
many.
The officiant at the end just makes an announcement. Everyone grab your chair and move it on over.
And it's 100 degrees, and you're in a suit at my old Kentucky Home State Park, and you have to walk all the way across.
Locust Grove.
That's
was
crazy.
big, and
What?
It was
Yeah.
100.
Did I break my own bag chair?
Yeah. Oh, that's
You might
not
as
far
well.
off.
I mean, that I'm saying did the invitation say bring your own chair?
No, I haven't had a BYO chair. I've had a BYO fork. Have you heard of that one? And some,
What?
yeah. And someone that was BYO fork because they wanted to collect. They wanted their life to start with a fork from everybody's house.
Okay.
That's interesting.
And so everyone is like, and some people brought chopsticks, and it was like this.
That's
was
very-
collective.
That's unique.
But then who got to collect
Yeah,
the
exactly.
dirty forks?
Yeah.
You.
Hello.
Did you wash them all?
Oh no, that's what I want. Can I say-
Yes, you can.
Okay, no, I can't wash.
No, I'm not washing no dishes.
No, I put it in a truck.
I'm
Yeah,
still
exactly.
stuck on the chair thing.
No, that really happens more.
That one's more
That happens
normal
all the
than a
time.
fork. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
And you'll literally have some little 80-year-old,
Grandma.
90-pound woman trying to carry her chair up the hill, and yeah.
In the
Okay,
grass with
this
her
would-
heels, digging in her heels.
This would be a great time to say, if you're listening to this podcast, awesome, on whatever your favorite podcast platform. But if you really want to see behind the scenes of the recording of this episode, you want to make sure you go to our YouTube channel and see the video, because it would be well worth it for this.
But then, like, at the same time, don't you also feel like, okay, I get it. I get why if you have 150 guests and you don't want to pay for double the
$7
chairs.
a chair.
And
do
budgets,
that,
like, so it's like on one hand I so validate and like understand where the couples are coming from, but on the other hand I'm like, guys, I promise that extra however much money, if you can swing it, like, you're not gonna want to see people carrying chairs.
Well, I
You know,
was
it's just
thinking
things
to
like that.
myself, hiring someone to move the chairs,
Sure.
not even asking the guest.
Well, there are-
Well, that's even.
There are chair companies
Pros and
though,
cons.
that when they
Okay.
deliver your chairs, they will keep people on site, and for I think it's $1 a chair. The last time I did it, they will move. I just did it at Whitehall with Mike this past summer. But for $1 a chair, they will keep people on site to move the chairs from ceremony to reception.
And that's kind of clean because the guests could be over in the
It's
cocktail
not-
garden, so
it's
they
it's a
can't
lot
see it as
better than
much.
guests moving them, but
Sure.
still it's a lot of clanging and banging and
What went in my mind was the grandparents, your
Yeah.
older guests and stuff like that. And
nobody who's a guest should have to carry their chair. I mean, it's a thing.
Yeah, we'll
you know what? To each their own.
Yeah.
And it's up to you about your wedding. And this is
She's
the
putting the
disclaimer.
disclaimer in.
But
Yeah.
but do you really want?
But really
The
sit back and think
remembrance.
about it.
I'm going to sit down and we're having a conversation with some friends and said, hey, can you believe I had to carry my chair
And you will hear that.
from
You
up
will
the
hear
hill to the reception?
Not how great
and
the
not how great the beautiful the bride was,
Or
or
the
how great
decor.
the food was, or how pretty the
But I
flowers
think
were.
People are
again-
so petty, aren't
Yeah.
we? Just I would be.
I would totally do it. I would totally be that girl.
before this takes too far of a turn.
Yeah, sorry.
turn.
Get us back on track.
Okay. So all in all, I think we can wrap this episode up with, if you're planning this yourself with no help from a wedding professional as a planner or a coordinator, really put thought into what's going to take place on the wedding day, allotting enough time, having a written schedule, a timeline of how that's going to happen. Make sure you leave enough room in there to breathe,
And give it to the people who need it.
and
Right?
have
Don't just have it in your brain.
And
Right.
also have dedicated people if stuff needs to be moved, some kind of action needs to be taken. Not that needs to happen, but also who's going to help
Right.
that happen.
And my only caveat to that would be to utilize your vendor team. Make sure that they have that timeline. Get their input. Say, what do you need to make your day successful?
Communication.
Yes.
We're back to communication. Communicating with those vendors and making sure they're going to help. Okay. Well, it sounds like she's going to come back and be another guest. I can't wait for that one.
I'll just be part of the team.
Mike,
That's
Sounds
not
great.
Or some.
Come on.
Mike, I'm just glad you got a word in because I didn't know if you were or not.
He did pretty good today.
Yes. Okay. Thank you all so much for listening. Maggie, thank you for taking
Maggie,
time
thanks.
to come
Thank
in
you
and
so
be a
much.
guest. And we would love to hear your feedback on this episode. Make sure to click subscribe. And if you like what you hear, take a few minutes to write us a.
Glowing 5-star review.
Until next time, everyone, stay safe.